Hey, everybody. Welcome to Odd and Untold, the podcast where we talk about all things strange and spooky. And this week, we're going to be talking about some spooky, creepy backwoods stories, people who've been in the woods and just had some weird things happen to them. This episode is inspired kind of by a channel on YouTube that I watch called Raven Reads. And she's just this cool woman who she reads stories off of Reddit and other online places, which I'm going to do a little bit tonight. She puts a little bit more dramatic emphasis on it and doesn't really analyze the stories. She's more of just a presenter and not an investigator like I am. And I try to give my thoughts and debunking or do I believe or whatever my thoughts are on the stories. But I usually listen to her at night. I put her on YouTube, and my son always laughs at me. Other people ask me like, "How do you fall asleep to like scary stuff like that?" And that's just what I fall asleep to. I love listening to like spooky stories and Bigfoot stuff. And it's either that or like The Office or Mystery Science Theater 3000. Those are like the three things I tend to fall asleep to at night. But Raven Reads, I'll put a link down to her channel down below. Really cool. And most of her videos are like 3.5, 4 hours because she's just reading these stories. And like I said, no analysis, just one story into the next. And some of the stories are really cool. Some of them are kind of stupid and annoying, but for the most part, really cool. And she's got a great voice and she does a really good job reading. So I'll put a link to her channel below. Very cool stuff. And just wanted to thank everybody again for tuning in last week for the 100th episode. I was on live and I was able to chat with a few of you for the premiere of the 100th episode. And that was really cool. I might do that more often when I premiere episodes and just try to be in the live chat with you guys and talk about, the show and the guest and the topic. Really awesome stuff. And Brian Goslin, the guest last week, was just so awesome. I mean, he was such a cool guy, and I can't wait to meet him. I'm going to go up at some point, hopefully this summer, and meet him and his wife, Sue. And we're going to go to the location where he had his Bigfoot encounter. So very cool. I was very happy to speak with Brian, and the feedback I've gotten so far has been great. Everybody who knows Brian is just like, he's so cool, and I'm so glad you had him on the show. So thank you, everybody. And without further ado, to use a overused YouTube saying, let's get to the spooky stories. Okay, so this first story is a shorter one, and this whole episode will be a little bit shorter. I just last week's episode went really long, almost 2 hours. It was our 100th episode, so I did like a supersized. This one will be a little bit shorter this week, but this is a shorter story, and this I'm using the subreddit, Creepy Woods Stories, and this comes from user Usual Wafer 4981, and again, I will link to this thread in the comments below so you guys can find this site and this subreddit if you guys want to explore it. I'm just kind of picking the stories that really appeal to me. There's some other good ones in here, but I'm just picking ones that I wanted to talk about. And the title of this one is I'll Never Know the Answer to This. And I will read what this user says. One time, me and this friend of mine decided to hike around in the woods. We spent the whole day just walking around, exploring is something a lot of me and my friends enjoyed, and it was getting dark, and we decided to head back. And while we were walking, the sun kept getting lower and lower, and then it was near dark. But we were only 30 minutes away, and I was looking around, and then I caught sight of this light. I said to my bro, "Hey man, do you see that?" He looks at it, and then at me, and says, "What is that?" As we walked by, it became clear that there were two of them, and not a light. These were flames, two flames going down this tree very slowly, and they weren't connected. They were a couple of feet apart, but the tree wasn't on fire, and it was just those two little flames. No other color, just blue. We got curious and started walking toward the area, but this funny feeling came over us, and we both stopped, and my bro says, "Man, I'm just not feeling right about this." We both stood a ways away, and I said, "Yeah, me too. Let's get out of here." We walked away and looked at it, and they were still there, but it was very weird and creepy. So this sounds almost like orbs. It sounds almost like ball lightning. We hear a lot of lights in the woods. People talk about orbs. They'll talk about strange lights. They'll think a friend is coming or a stranger. Just they'll see a light coming and they think it's a flashlight. They think it's some other light source. They think it's a person. And then it just turns out to be this sort of floating light that is existing on its own. It's not a flashlight. It's just a light. Usually people will report them as orbs. This is sort of, they're saying flames, almost like, a flame from a candle going down the tree. Very strange. St. Elmo's fire, maybe. Could be, swamp gas. Could be any number of things. It's creepy, to be in the woods and just see lights that you don't recognize or understand. Usually there's an explanation for them. It just reminds me of the story. We were in Gettysburg one time, and we were at Pickett's Charge at the Virginia Monument, if anybody knows where that is on the Gettysburg battlefield. And there's woods to our right, and the battlefield is open in front of us. And I remember we were walking along the wood line, and I see this blue light in the woods and just moving, and then it disappeared. And then I see it again out of the corner of my eye, and then I'm looking in the woods and I'm seeing it, and very strange. And then I realized it was just lightning bugs or fireflies. And here in New York, they're a yellow color. I've never seen a blue firefly, but then I saw a couple more, and they weren't ghosts. They weren't anything paranormal. They were just fireflies, but they were blue, and I just never seen them like that color before. And there was another year we were down there. We were walking through the wheat field, and there was little glowworms on the ground, and you could just see stuff on the ground glowing, and you'd see it, from a few feet away, and it would catch your eye. So you just never know what you're seeing out there. So this story, I don't know, St. Elmo's fire, swamp gas, will-o'-the-wisp, sometimes they call it. I'll put links to all this stuff down below so you guys can delve more deeply into what those phenomena are. They're fairly common. I believe it's usually just from vegetation and swamps and forests just dying, and it releases gases, and sometimes they're luminous. But these guys are saying it was flames. So I thought that was interesting. A little creepy. Don't know what to make of it. What do you guys think? Story number 2 comes to us from user Junkie Goat Giblets. Junkie Goat Giblets. Try saying that 5 times fast. This title here is Knock Knock, Who's There? Who's spelled wrong. A lot of these are spelled wrong, and there's some bad grammar here. So if I kind of stumble over my words, forgive me. It's just sometimes it's hard to process that. But I will read this one. This is a longer story. Hello, this is a story from 2 years ago. I decided I was going to go out and try a solo camping trip on a friend's property in northern Jersey. A huge mistake, as it turned out. For a bit of background, I was 24, relatively fit, hiking-wise at least, and was extremely familiar with the property as we've camped there several times in the past. I know for a fact that there was chances to encounter wild dogs, deer, and black bears out there, maybe even a person or two, the rarest of all the woodland critters out where I was. I'm not a very brave man by all accounts, but I really wanted to get comfortable enough out in the woods to begin doing some solo camping for when my son finally comes of age so that I can teach and show him the ways of nature. Huge bushcrafting fan here, lifelong hiker and group camper. I packed up and made the 2-hour journey to my friend's, who will be called Deer Bro from here on out since his family owns a deer farm, his place. I arrived at around 11 a.m. and made my way down and around the side of the mountain. Tons of cool stuff to find here. Lots of old iron mines and tools scattered around the woodlands. Hike was beautiful. Only took an hour or so to get down to the normal campsite. Over the next 7 hours, I just kind of mess around and fix up some of Deer Bro's camp furniture and add my own personal touches. A little bench, a couple bucked up logs for sitting, etc. And test out a few of the knives I had just gotten. Made a fire and made note of a weird knocking noise from across the valley. Sounded like it was pretty far away and kind of sounded like an axe hitting hardwood. Very rhythmic, so I assumed a neighbor was doing some forest clearing and went about my business. In the last hour before dusk, this knocking noise just kept creeping closer until just before it got dark, it was right at the bottom of the valley, which I could clearly see. Looked for a source, found nothing. Who cares? They aren't next to me, I guess. Knocking noise continued to get closer, first about 500 yards from camp, then 300, 200, etc., until it was finally dark and the knocking noise was no more than 20 yards from my camp, behind a massive fallen maple. Cue me freaking out like a small child, calling a ride from Deer Bro into camp, and shouting quite loudly that I was armed. Deer Bro lent me a firearm in case of bear aggression. Knocking noise stops. I go to lay down and wait for my ride, probably about 20 minutes out because FML, I guess. Knocking noise starts again right behind my tarp. Nope, the fuck out of there and leave all my gear and start hiking up the trail to the deer gate. Knocking noise follows me until I get into the deer pen, stops, and I don't hear it again for the rest of the waiting period. Deer Bro says it was a bird. I say it definitely was not a bird and was way too rhythmic and intentional for that kind of ish. What do you guys think? So what do you all think? And some of the comments in here say Bigfoot, Sasquatch. This one's interesting to me because it's not the typical Bigfoot tree knocking type of an account that we hear where it's a couple of knocks and then that's it, or it starts up again. This seems to go on for a couple hours. It seems to move closer to him. He's not seeing anything, and then it's right behind his tent, or his tarp. So, and it freaks him out. And again, from a distance, you're hearing knockings from a distance. Yeah, you assume it's a neighbor. You assume it's another person bucking up wood, or clearing out their property, or whatever it is they're doing. But when it gets close to you and it's like right behind the tarp, uh, who knows? And it doesn't say he looked behind the tarp. It doesn't say what he saw. I don't know if there were trees back there or if he was out in the open where he could say. So this one sounds almost perhaps paranormal. I don't think it was a bird. I mean, I don't know a bird that will knock on wood rhythmically like that. I mean, if you hear a woodpecker, it's and then it stops, and it's usually little bursts of quick pecks. Woodpecker. This sounds like they were more bangs and knockings, and the fact that it came all the way into his camp, he didn't see anything. I also think it's interesting that when he says he has a gun, it stops. So that sort of indicates that perhaps this was something intelligent. Again, I don't know. Is this a ghost? Is this Bigfoot? It has elements of both and neither. So I didn't know what to make of this one. But again, it's one of these things where if you've been out in the woods, if you've been camping, and it gets dark and you hear these weird things that you can't explain, and especially if you're by yourself, a gun does you no good if you can't see what is stalking you. And this sounds like something was coming into his camp. And again, I don't know if, ghost Bigfoot, I don't know if he was just hearing something else. And he says he's, not the bravest guy. So maybe his mind was playing tricks on him. Maybe he was just, elevating this in his mind to something else. Who knows? But still, I thought it was a very creepy story because, again, you put yourself in these situations and then you're like, okay, that's kind of creepy. And how would I react? Would I have stayed the night? Would I have, called my friend and said, hey, come get me? Who knows? But love to hear what you guys think about this one in the comments below, because I'm kind of torn on this one. Is it Bigfoot? Is it a ghost or something paranormal or something preternatural? I don't know, but a cool story nonetheless. So our next story comes to us from user Red Fever 3993. It's titled Wooded Silence. And they write, I live in Vermont and grew up here nearly my entire life. I've always been at home in the woods. It has always made me feel calm, and I've never really feared being in the woods, especially in the daytime. Vermont doesn't have much to fear nature-wise. I don't have the ability to be silent, but I am very aware of my noise levels, as well as the sounds of the woods. I've had the woods go quiet on me a few times, but if you stop moving, the sounds of the woods come back, usually within a minute. Twice I've experienced the woods go absolutely silent and felt uneasy. So if you've watched my show before, or you know anything about Bigfoot sightings, this is a characteristic of them. Sometimes the woods will go silent, and he's saying he's had it go silent before, and sometimes it will go silent if you're just kind of trudging through the woods, because the little creatures around you will calm down because they don't want you to kind of find out where they are. If there's a cricket and you get too close to a cricket, it's going to stop. It's going to stop the chirping. But I digress. So let me finish with the story. The first time was when I was hiking with my then girlfriend up Mount Abe, maybe 2012. There's a section of the trail that is really unique and beautiful. The woods become less thick and moss covers most of the ground that you can see. We're hiking through this area. The woods go quiet and we both come to a stop. She asked if I felt that. I said something didn't seem right, but I laughed it off and jokingly attributed the silence to me huffing. We started off again with her still in the front. The quiet didn't end, and I kept feeling like someone was there, looking over my shoulder frequently. This section of the trail isn't terribly long, maybe a half hour, but the time seemed to be as still as the air. We finally got to the intersection of the next trail, and we stopped again. Just up the trail, not 30 feet away, we both saw someone run across the trail and go behind a small dead tree. They poked their head partially out from behind it and retracted it back behind the tree. This tree would have been hard for anyone but a child to hide behind. Without thinking, I walked past her, marched over to the tree, and looked around it. Nothing. The woods woke back up almost immediately. I walked back to her and discussed the whole thing. We both felt like this section of the path seemed to take way longer than it should have. We both noticed how uneasy the silence felt, almost like we were not alone. We both saw someone run behind the tree and peer around. We didn't know what to think, so we tried to laugh it off, hooked the rest of the way to the, I'm guessing hiked, hooked the rest of the way to the peak. We ate, chilled for a bit at the top, and went back the way we came without anything happening. I've hooked through there, and after that have never had anything happen again. The second time, fall of 2016, I was out behind my apartment that had a huge area of woods. The nearest road straight back was little more than 3 miles east. North and south was maybe 10 plus miles off total woods between roads. So I'm out maybe a mile deep, walking one day. The woods were alive with birds, squirrels, chipmunks, all getting ready for winter. Instantly, the woods go quiet. I stop to let it wake up, thinking it was me rustling the leaves and downed twigs. I hear something slowly walking and stop somewhere behind me. I look around, nothing. The wood stays quiet. I walk a little further, stop again, and once again, something walking, stopping, but still not visible. I did this a few more times with the same results. I begin to get concerned, cut north to make my way down a ravine and back west. I get out of the ravine and stop once again. The woods is still quiet. I hear something making its way down in heavy landings in the leaves. I booked it in very random zigzag way all the way back to my apartment. Again, I went out after and never experienced that again. The state says we don't have cougars/mountain lions. I think I would have known if it was a bear or a coyote early on. So this one, kind of two parts here, because I feel like the first part of the story from maybe 2012 that he says hiking with his then girlfriend, there's elements of this that sound very similar to the missing 411 accounts that we sometimes get. David Paulides, he's got an awesome YouTube channel. I will link to that down below. He tells some really creepy stories that he's come across, just in the newspapers and stuff, and from talking to people. But certain people will talk about almost like missing time, the woods going quiet, almost like they're in another dimension. Like it's not just the woods going quiet; it's like the wind will stop, and it's almost like they're in a simulation because there's no wind, there's no nature noises. They get the feeling that they've kind of stepped out of our world and into a parallel dimension that's not quite our world. Like I said, almost like a simulation. And then they see this person, they see someone dart across the trail and go behind a dead tree. And it's a small tree. And again, David Paulides has some stories like this where there's one story in particular I'm thinking where these two children, it's like a brother and a sister, see this being kind of peeking from behind a tree, and then it's at a different tree and peeking out from behind it. But they didn't see it actually move between trees, but it's behind this tree and peeking out, and then it's at another tree peeking out. So really creepy. And it just, that's what this reminds me of. It's almost like they got shifted out of our dimension and they're seeing this weird being, and the woods are quiet and time seems to stand still. Like he said, it almost took them like longer to walk this part of the trail than it should have. So a very weird, almost paranormal situation. And I don't know what to make of that. I don't know if it's a portal. I don't know if it's another dimension. I don't know if it's mass hallucination, but it reminded me of the missing 411 accounts from David Paulides. And again, awesome channel. All credit to him. I will credit that down below. I watched a lot of his stuff while I had the flu, so a few months ago. So, and I have his books, and just a cool guy, very smart, and he's put together some really interesting accounts. And don't know what's behind them, but every now and then one of his accounts will have this weird sort of interdimensional feel to it, and who knows what to make of it. The second part of the story here, this sounds a little bit more familiar as regards to like a Bigfoot encounter, because there's like that paralleling. He's hearing something following him. You know, he's walking, he hears footsteps, he stops, the footsteps stop. He starts walking again, the footsteps start again. He stops, they stop. And the woods go quiet, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a hallmark of Bigfoot sightings. People will say, like, they'll hear the woods go quiet and then they see Bigfoot. And that's kind of the cue to them that something is not right, and then they see something. But they'll often mention that. Not all the time. And again, there's certain things in Bigfoot sightings that are not always there, like the smell or the mind speak or whatever. And this is just one of those things where you hear it a lot, but not in every story. But you do hear about the woods getting quiet, almost like there's like a big predator around. And I like that this person is kind of thinking cougar or mountain lion. And a lot of states, the official report or the official stance is that, oh no, we don't have mountain lions or cougars. And then one will get like run over in the road or shot by a hunter. And it's like, oh, that's just an anomaly. But they're there, so very possibly it could have been a cougar or a mountain lion. But there's also that paralleling, which seems a little bit more intelligent than what a cougar would do. But who knows? Who knows? So that just reminded me of a Bigfoot sighting. The first encounter he had with the woods going quiet reminded me of missing 411 accounts and that spooky sort of paranormal aspect to them. So make of this what you will, guys. So the next story here, this is going to continue the trend. And this is submitted by user Dusty1000287, titled Woods of West Yorkshire. And he writes, so I posted this a few months ago in the subreddit hiking and thought it would be perfect here, so here goes. I'm 19 and live in West Yorkshire. I won't say where specifically due to privacy concerns, but I will tell you about the woods. The woods in question are small, less than 2 kilometers deep and about 2 to 3 kilometers wide, going in an east to west direction. For all intents and purposes, they are harmless. Perhaps the odd homeless person makes camp there, but not often. Part and parcel of woodlands. It is also important to note that these woods are, compared to other leisurely stroll along a flat path type woods, quite strenuous. There are 2 hills, an extremely steep one at a severe incline and the other a much more reasonable slope. I had played in these woods as a kid and knew them very well, so I should have been comfortable. However, on this day, I felt extremely uneasy during the walk through. This walk takes all of 5 minutes, and it's a nice end to a decent 2-mile walk. The day in question, however, I could not shake the feeling I was being followed, and when I heard a crack of a twig, I legged it through to the other side. I heard more twigs cracking in quick succession, so I'm certain I was being followed. Why, I don't know, but I refuse to go through those woods without my dog with me. Am I being irrational, or do I have a well-founded fear? So again, we hear this sort of paralleling, walking through the woods, there's nobody else around, but you're hearing these footsteps matching yours. I've never experienced this. Thankfully, I don't think I want to. But most of the time when you're walking, you hear your own footsteps, and I'm never in the woods alone. I'm usually with my buddy Josh, and he's usually ahead of me, or I'm in the lead. He's usually in the lead. But we hear each other's footsteps, but I never hear anything off to any side. But even if I'm kind of going off on my own, if I'm, heading back on the trail to kind of get some firewood or go to the bathroom or anything like that, or just exploring. Sometimes we do that by ourselves. We'll just kind of go off and explore or get wood. I've never been paralleled. And, this person says he's familiar with the woods. He's been in the woods his whole life and knew them well. And just this one time, he had this weird feeling. He doesn't mention the woods really going quiet, but he just says he has a weird feeling and the twigs snapping. So again, like something is tracking him. And again, I don't think that someone who's familiar with the woods, who's been in the woods a lot, is going to just take any random noise in the woods and say, oh, like that's creepy. A person who's never been in the woods, yes, because there are a lot of noises in the woods that if you don't know what they are, they can freak you out, because it's like, what is that? Is that a bear? Is that a deer? Is that a person? Is that a branch falling? There's lots of weird, strange sounds in the woods. And if you don't know what they are, I could see getting scared. But he says that he's been in the woods, these woods since he was a kid. So he's familiar with them. And why is he writing about this one instance where he's hearing twigs snapping? He didn't see anything, but sounds like he was being followed or paralleled. So interesting, but tied it back to the previous story. So I thought it was pretty cool. Okay, so this next story comes to us from user djax1468. It's titled Kentucky Encounter. He writes, I was black powder hunting alone on private property. The property has gated entrance, and I parked my four-wheeler there and normally walked in the remaining 150 to 200 yards to my elevated deer stand. As I shut my four-wheeler off and put on my backpack, I heard a very large limb snap and thought it was a deer or animal moving around, maybe 20 yards away. So I didn't think anything about it, gathered my gun and hunting stuff, and started walking down the 2-track trail without my flashlight on due to having good enough light from the moon to see where I was walking. I hunted here a long time and knew the trail. This trail ended in a 15-acre hayfield surrounded by old-growth timber. As I walked in the dark, I quickly realized something was paralleling my every step just inside the woods. I walked and stopped, and it would do the same. By the time I realized it, it was too late to go back to the four-wheeler, so I picked my pace and made a beeline for my deer stand. When I got within 10 yards from the stand, I heard another large limb snap really close to the edge of the field on my left. I stopped, turned my flashlight on, and shined it in that direction. I seen two glowing green eyes about 10 inches apart. Instinctively, I raised my rifle and stomped my foot at it, not really sure what I was seeing. It just blinked its eyes once and never moved. I could not make out any details, just that it may have been crouched down due to the proximity of the eyes to the ground. When whatever this was didn't run like most non-predatory animals would do, I realized in that instant the best thing to do was bolt up my ladder and get in the stand as quickly as possible. This, whatever it was no more than 8 steps away, and if I shot at it, I would have been blinded by the muzzle flash and it might attack if I missed in the dark. The rest of the time I waited in the stand for daybreak. It circled my stand just out of light shine. Approximately 1 minute before daybreak, I heard it go into the woods where it had followed me from. I waited till daylight and quickly made my way back to my four-wheeler. As I jumped on the machine and just before I fired it up, I heard another branch or limb snap loudly. I left the area and went back home and cut the week-long hunt short and didn't return until the following spring. I've never hunted the same way again since and rarely go in before or after dark on foot. I've since sold that property and hunted my home state of Indiana. So this is an interesting one. He's talking about being paralleled. He sees the green eyes. Green eye shine can typically be attributed to a large predatory cat. So bobcat or mountain lion, cougar. But he says the eyes were about 10 inches apart. So this one, again, I'm kind of on the fence about this one because he's saying that the eyes are down low to the ground. So it's not that he's seeing them, 8 feet in the air or 10 feet in the air, but they're far apart. So that tells me that it's maybe not a cat because even big predatory cats are not that big. Their eyes are not 10 inches apart. And the tree limbs breaking, that is also interesting. One, you can say maybe the cat jumped down off a branch and the branch, crashed, or maybe it was just a coincidental branch falling to the ground while he's being followed or paralleled. But to hear all these different tree breaks and branch breaks, and then he's seeing these eyes, very interesting. I just think that they're 8 inches apart. That's interesting to me. And other animals have more of a reddish or orange eye shine, like bears and other animals, will have, and a lot of Bigfoot sightings, you hear about the red eyes or the orange eyes. So the green eyes is very interesting because, again, it sort of says cat, but with 10 inches between the eyes, that's a big cat. So maybe a big cat, maybe not Bigfoot, maybe big cat, just very, very large cat. Who knows? Or Dogman. I mean, I not that I'm really into Dogman, but I believe dogs have the green eye shine at night as well. So, what do you guys think of this one? Again, this has got some Bigfoot characteristics. Maybe a big cat, a cryptid cat, a phantom cat. I don't know, but again, this is a hunter. This is somebody who's familiar with being in the woods, familiar with animals, armed, and then says, I don't hunt this way anymore. I didn't go back until the following spring, and I sold the property. Like, just nope, kind of noped right out of there. So thought that was interesting, but curious to see what you guys make of that. And we will move on to our last story for the episode. All right, so we come to our last story for the evening, and we've been talking a little bit about Bigfoot here so far, and this one kind of takes a different turn. This was submitted by user Felioness, and it's titled Weirdness in the Woods. So I'll read what she wrote. My friend and I were walking our dogs where the old sanitarium used to be. Now it is a wooded area on the edge of town. It always felt a little creepy to me. My Roddy Lab Cross, Susie Q, always wanted to take this certain path, but it was usually swampy, so I wouldn't let her. One day in the fall, it dried up, so this time I let her go and followed. We found bed sheets made into a noose hanging from a tree. It looked really creepy. I took a picture of it. There was also a rotting mattress and garbage strewn about. Very weird vibe there, and I did not like it at all. Fast forward to the following summer. Again, my friend and I were walking the dogs. When we came to the fork in the path where Susie Q always wanted to go, I heard voices. It was that of an old man, 60s or so. His voice sounded rather gravelly, with 2 young girls around 10 years old. They were on the path but turned back, going in deeper into the woods to the place where I saw the noose. I stopped and wondered if I should do something. It just felt wrong. My friend told me to forget it and kept walking. As I stood there wrestling with my conscience and wondering if I should call the cops because it seemed inappropriate, I heard rustling noises in the bushes behind me. Turning, I saw a young girl, about 11 or 12. She had lots of freckles and stringy red hair that hung to her shoulders. Her head was down, and she was looking at me through her bangs. She was wearing a red striped shirt, jeans, and runners. Her hands hung by her sides in fists, and that's when I noticed she had a red Victoria Knox knife in her right hand with the blade out. She just kept walking toward me with this weird look, not saying anything. I thought to myself, gee, I'm going to have to fight a little girl, one with a freaking knife. Just then, Susie Q came bounding back with the other dog, Dory, and the little girl stepped backwards into the bush without taking her eyes off me until she disappeared into the foliage. I caught up with my friend, moving rather quickly, and told him what had happened. He agreed it was friggin' weird, and we headed back home, but I still think about that day and wonder what the hell it was all about. So this one, she doesn't say where this happened. I'm trying to find that here. It doesn't really say, so I don't know which sanatorium, I don't know which state she's in, which country she's in. This is really weird. People kind of like living in the woods, an old man and two young girls, the noose, very strange. And yeah, I can understand her frustration because do you call the cops just because there might be people in the woods because it seems creepy or inappropriate? The little girl with the knife, that is weird. And this just reminds me of stories I used to hear about pineys down in the Pine Barrens, or you hear about people in Appalachia, and that they're kind of they reject modernity and they kind of isolate themselves, and the sort of the typical hillbilly trope where they're just in the woods being weird and creepy and dangerous, and that's kind of what this sounds like. Again, I don't know where this took place. I don't know where in the world this is, but weird to come across that. Weird to come across a little girl with a knife and just being she's not giggling, she's not laughing, she didn't break, she didn't like try to be tough and then start giggling. Just sounds really weird. And then the dog ran up and the little girl retreats, but she doesn't even run away. She just kind of fades back into the bushes. And again, this reminds me of a story an experience I had. We were in Gettysburg, and we went to a place that many people don't go to, Neil Avenue or the Forgotten Avenue, whatever they call it there. And you have to like really hike deep into the woods. No action ever took place there. There were some reinforcements placed there. So there's some monuments there to this day, but you have to hike through some really deep woods, and it borders private property. So you got to be real careful not to go onto someone else's property. There are people who will guide you in there if you contact the appropriate people. But we went in one time, it was me and my dad and my wife at the time, and we just went in to explore and find these monuments because we'd never been there. So we go to the same places all the time, Devil's Den and Little Round Top and the Wheat Field. Let's go to Forgotten Avenue or Neil Avenue and just see these monuments and just kind of cross it off our bucket list. And as we were going in, you had to follow this trail to a certain point and then take a sharp left to get to the monuments. And beyond the monuments, there's a quarry, and it's just there's nothing back there. But as we kind of got to the left-hand turn, if we had kept going straight, there's a pond, a small, very small lake, basically a pond ahead of us. And there was this creepy guy, and he had these two young children. And as he saw us coming, and he was kind of unkempt, but as he saw us coming, he kind of took the kids and put them in, it wasn't a carriage, it was almost like a pull cart, like a little red wagon or something. But he puts the kids in there and he kind of books it out of there. And he kind of acknowledged us just by like nodding at us and then booked it out of there. But he seemed to panic when we came in. And we had the same conversation. Like, should we call the police? Like, did this guy kidnap these kids? And the kids didn't seem to be in distress. They seemed to be happy and playing. But it was just weird how this guy saw us, because they didn't seem to be packing up. They didn't seem to be like wrapping up their day. The kids were just running around. And this dude saw us and was like, all right, kids, getting the thing. And he booked it out of there like very quickly. Again, acknowledged us, but Didn't stop to say anything, didn't stop to ask us, oh, you guys going to see the monuments? It's a nice day, whatever. Like, just did not want to talk to us. And we said, look, by the time we get a cell phone signal to call the cops and tell them where this is, like, this guy's going to be long gone. And we tried to kind of see where he went, and we don't know. And again, it could have been totally innocent. Could have just been some guy out with his daughters and playing with them. But it was just very strange how he just booked it and didn't seem to want to talk to us and panicked when he saw us. I don't know. I really don't know. We never called the cops because, like I said, by the time we could have, he would have been long gone. And then where does he live? We don't know. He was in the woods. They're not going to come out for that. But it's one of those things that always makes you wonder. And we still talk about it to this day. Like, oh, you remember that? That was really weird. But this story reminded me of that. So nothing paranormal here, but just sounds like people of the woods being strange and very frightening. If you have a child come at you with a knife and you got to defend yourself, and then you got to tell the cops like why you're beating up a little girl. Very, very strange, very unsettling. So this was a creepy one. You could kind of make this into a movie or a short story, but very strange. So, but yeah, it reminded me of my experience in Gettysburg because that was weird for us and a little unsettling for us because sometimes you just can't put your finger on things, and that's okay. That's kind of how the world works. Sometimes you just you can't explain it, and you just have a gut feeling. You got to trust your instincts sometimes, and sometimes your instincts just tell you something's wrong here. And we got that sense. We didn't want to overreact because, again, he could have just lived nearby. He could have just been a shy type of person. He could have had a learning disability or some other mental disability where he was just very shy or very skittish around people. I don't know. Again, the kids did not seem unsafe. So I don't even know if the cops would have come out. They're going to say, well, it was probably a dad and his kids, and he just, they wanted privacy, and now some people come trudging through, and he left. But our guts always kind of told us like something was a little bit off about that. So what do you do? What do you think? So let me know what you guys think below about these stories. Again, shorter episode this week. Last week was very long, so I'm kind of keeping this one a little bit shorter. And I love these spooky stories. I'm going to keep doing these from time to time because I just love reading people's experiences out there, and especially when there's no clear cut explanation for what they saw. I mean, nothing here is screaming Bigfoot or ghost or serial killer or anything like that. It's just, what do you make of it? I mean, it's kind of got elements of Bigfoot, kind of got elements of the paranormal, but what is it? It's just people in the woods and having weird encounters. And I've been there. So had some weird things happen in the woods that I can't explain. And I don't know what they are. So stories like this speak to me. So I hope you guys like that. If you have a story that you would like to share with me, please email me, jason@oddanuntold.com. I will get back to you as soon as possible. Again, you can come on the show and we can talk. You can come on the show and stay anonymous. I can hide your face and your name. If you just want to type out your story to me and I can read it on the air, I will do that. Or if you just want to share the story with me and not have me share it on the air, I will do that. I've done that for many people. A lot of people have reached out to me with stories and just said, please don't share this. And I haven't, but it's still cool for me to read the stories and allows me to connect some dots sometimes. So yeah, definitely do that. And if you like the channel, you like our content here, please like and subscribe and comment and like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Leave us a review if you're listening on a audio only platform. The reviews really do help us and help the algorithms. And again, I appreciate constructive feedback, and we will see you next week. Until then, everybody, question everything. We can't accept everything at face value. Not saying that people are lying, but we're here to kind of figure out these mysteries, and mysteries require questioning. So question everything. Until next time, everybody, rock and roll. Listen to Riversend as we go out.